Sponsor for the talk is, well, I'm not going to say the sponsors. I'm not sure if it's supposed to be known, but it's in honor of Yoel ben Miriam, David Dov ben Toba, Kayla Rivka bat Esther Sarah, and Leah Esther bat Yehudit Shmuela. So we thank our sponsor, of course, and should be all good and blessed things. Sorry, I had to go out there for a second. Just had it on my phone. All right, here we go, my friends. Tov. So tonight's talk, of course, we're in the middle of this series. This series, which is all about the Sefirot as we journey from Pesach to Shavuot. And as we have mentioned in the past, that journey is one of, Passover night, according to Kabbalah, is the highest night of the year. You break out, like normally in life, in our relationship with God, in relationship with Torah, our relationship with mitzvot, we experience whatever level we're at. But Passover Seder night, one of the reasons it's called Passover, is because there is a passing over of levels. That means, sorry, one second. Sorry about that. That means that Passover night, we're not limited to our typical experiences. We can bust out of that. We can bust out of our usual limitations, and we come to a place which hopefully is beyond where we're at that moment. Here's what happens though. That's an awesome experience, and it's a real experience, but the bottom line is we're not at that level. And so what goes up must come down. And the idea is that on that moment though, in that night, on that first night of Passover, hopefully experience is grand high, but then the point is to take that experience and bring it into our lives, to take that freedom of self and bring it into the nitty-gritty of the reality of where we are, and bring it into the different midot that we have, and say, okay, am I free in this particular way? Am I have an attribute of chesed, but am I kind of enslaved to the chesed, or am I using it for the good? Can I go ahead and can I get involved there and be coming at it from a conscious, healthy place, right? Because as we mentioned, all of these characteristics of the Sefirot are holy, but they can also, we have free will. We can use them in a holy way, or we can start to get owned by them. And then that's not holy anymore. We start becoming subservient to these characteristics, it becomes patterns, it becomes we see things in a certain way and we just kind of follow up on it. And so the point is, can we go ahead and take that grand freedom of Passover night and infuse it into the nitty-gritty of our lives? And that's what we're doing as we move from Passover to Shavuot. And really, in one way of looking at it, according to the deeper books, it's one long holiday as opposed to 7 days. We have 7 weeks here of Passover going on. So that's, of course, what we're doing here. So now this week, we're talking about the Midah of YESOD, the attribute, the sphere of YESOD. And so we want to understand a little bit what that's about. So there's numerous ways we can go into this and explain it. I want to keep it going the way we've been talking about it now, which has to do with how do we see this in our life? How do we see this in terms of our life, our connections, our relationships, which is what YESOD is all about. And so before we get into YESOD, though, let's just talk about the last couple of weeks. We were talking about Netzach, we were talking about Hod, and we spoke about how Netzach is the concept of being assertive. Hod is the concept of being more submissive or agreeable or accepting, right? And again, a lot of times people think like, oh, this is good, this is bad. I like this one's not as good. No, these are all holy attributes. It's on us to go ahead and to come to it from a place of da'at, from a place of consciousness, from a place of mindfulness, from being able to get outside of my pullings towards chesed or towards gvura or towards netzach or towards hod, to be able to get outside of that and become a master of my midah instead of the midah being a master over me. And that begins with dat, that begins with consciousness, that begins with ownership of self, that begins with when I start to see myself taking that fourth donut, I say, hold on a second. My body's running on autopilot here. There's something about the donut. There's something about my body. There's something about myself. Hold on a second. let me take a step back and have a mastery. I can see the donut, I can feel the donut, I can smell the donut, and have that urge, have that desire, but yet be able to say the donut's staying on the outside, right? So that's what we're looking for. So as we get into the concept of YESOD, as we get into the concept of YESOD, we want to understand what it means relationship and from a healthy place, right? So let's get into what it looks like, right? Because YESOD first and foremost means a healthy oscillation between Netzach and Hod, what we spoke about the last 2 weeks, right? A healthy oscillation between being assertive and knowing when to be assertive and knowing when to be submissive. What do I mean by that, right? Because assertive, again, is a good thing. There's a time to be assertive. There's a healthy way to be assertive. As a human being, it's appropriate. As a person, it's appropriate that you're assertive at certain times. But if you do it all the time, and if you do it in an extreme way, now you've crossed the line from assertive to aggressive, right? And Hod also, same thing. People think, oh, I'm going to take the path of holiness. I'll go say, oh, I don't care, I never say anything, and you think you're very holy, but is that really coming from a holy place? Or is that coming from insecurity and dysfunction, right? If it's coming from insecurity and dysfunction, let me tell you a little, let me drop a bombshell on you here. It's not holy, right? A lot of times we do that. A lot of times it's so easy to take Judaism and then use it as a way that we can kind of take our own emotional issues and baggage and troubles and insecurities and problems and brokenness and somehow wrap a Jewish wrapping paper around it. And now we can call it holiness, and we can excuse ourselves because not only are we going to look at it as not dysfunction, we're going to look at it as something positive, right? If I'm insecure about certain things, if I'm insecure about my body, if I'm insecure, so now tznius comes and saves the day. Right? Oh, okay. Physical things. We don't need to emphasize the physical, so we should de-emphasize the physical. Okay, it's good and holy if it's coming from a holy place. If you're very capable of being physical, but you say, okay, you know what? I'm going to be tsanua and get in touch with the fact that I'm not just a body, right? But if it's coming from a place of insecurity, so great. So you're feeling insecure your whole life. Then you go ahead and you find Judaism, and now it's this speaks to me. This speaks to me. Is it really speaking to the higher you, or is it speaking to your insecurity, right? And so there is a time for agreeableness, submissiveness that's healthy, right? And we spoke about that last week. If anyone wants the link, we can get it to you. But there's also a time when you're supposed to be a person. There's a time for you to assert netzach. There's a time for you to be assertive, right? To say what you want. And we're going to talk about that. So part of the aspect of this week's conversation is understanding the ability to oscillate between the two, right? Last week we spoke also a lot about, when we talked about Hod, we talked about what I like to call, when really I got it from somebody else, containing disharmony. Containing disharmony. That, like, what does it mean to be containing disharmony? It means like I want something to be different, but it's really on the other person. It's in the other person's domain. Therefore, I'm going to be able to contain the disharmony that the other person isn't doing what I would like them to do. Right? That's Hod. I'm being agreeable in that moment. I'm being submissive. I'm being submissive in that moment. I'm being accepting of that moment and giving the other person the ability to make the choice, even though it's something that I think isn't the right thing to do, or it's something that I didn't want. Why? Because it's the healthy thing in that moment is to assert Hod, right? Which is to contain disharmony, which is to be accepting, which is to give people their Dalet Amos, right? And not to squash them out of their life, right? And by the way, if someone is doing that to you, that's a time to use netzach, to be assertive and to stand up like, no, this is my choice. This is in my Dalet Amos, in my space. Okay, so this is what we spoke about last time. And now we're talking about, first and foremost, in one way of looking at it, is the merging of the two. That's the concept of YESOD, when we oscillate between the two in a healthy way. And so let's talk about that a little bit. Because what we mean by healthy relationship is authentic sharing, being able to express where I'm coming from my space, what it feels for me. And we said this, I forget if it was last week or two weeks ago, probably both times, the idea of like when we speak, to come from a place of what I am experiencing, right? So as opposed to attacking the other person, I'm able to say, okay, when this happens, I feel hurt, or this particular thing pains me, right? Or right. So this way, when we talk about it from coming from a place of me, and we use the word I instead of the word you, we're saying, listen, hopefully we're not coming from a place of attacking. We're saying, look, this is my experience. I'm sharing with you what I'm feeling, as opposed to you did something wrong, right? Because when you say you did something wrong, then people get defensive, and then it doesn't go anywhere positive anywhere, right? And so in a healthy relationship, there is a balance of autonomy and couplehood. Where am I as an individual, and where am I as being an aspect of a couple, right? And so there's like this mutual dignity there. Where it's like, hold on a second, you still exist as an individual. And that's the thing, a lot of times in the Western world, this gets smothered, right? We're taught that relationship means just sharing everything. You just got to share everything. And it doesn't relationship mean just totally open and communication, whatever. Yeah, open communication, but to a point that there's help. Has to be from places of emotional health. You do exist as an individual. And so how do we, and being able to recognize where me and my choices have a place independent of this relationship, right? Okay, what does the other side look like? What's an unhealthy relationship, or probably better to call it an entanglement, which I think is a much better way of putting it, right? Usually that is rooted in an inherent lack, right? Does a person feels within themselves, why does a person go to an entanglement? Why does a person become entangled in a situationship, right? How many people are in situationships, So you don't have to all comment at once. Why do we get entangled? Because there's usually it's coming from a place of the lower side of ourselves. There's a certain inherent lack of sense of self-worth or personal boundaries, and coming from a place of neediness, a place of needing to be validated, or we have what I like to call the other half syndrome, right? I'm looking for my other half. What does that? A lot of times, I mean, you remember that movie from back in the day. It's called Jerry Maguire, where the person, I think it was the guy, says to the gal, "You complete me," right? One of them says to the other, I don't know. You complete me. It became a very famous line. And we walk around with that mentality, looking for someone else to complete us. Now, it sounds good and romantic at first, but hold on a second. We have to understand the difference between our individual self and our relationship self, right? Our individual self means that, like, you need to be a whole on your own in order to then be a half in a relationship. Because if you're coming as a half of yourself, looking for the other person to complete you, so then you don't have a you here as the participant in the relationship. You're looking for the other person to do their 50% plus really 25% of you, right? And of course, by the way, the person you're going to attract is expecting this, it's coming from the same place to a certain extent, right? That there's the 50% of them that's holding in a place of brokenness and hoping that you're going to be there to fix them and to save them and to make their life worthy and themselves worthy, right? And so when that happens, right, what happens is, if there's issues that come up, a lot of times there'll be unexpressed feelings. There'll be times where people don't want to speak what they need to speak because they don't want to rock the boat, right? There'll be all sorts of unhealthy patterns, or there'll be, of course, the opposite. There'll be all sorts of explosions because I can't tolerate the person not being exactly the way I envision them to be, because I need them to be something for me, because without it, I'm feeling such a lack, right? And ultimately, this leads to frustration, which leads to resentment, which leads to passive-aggressive behavior. And of course, from there, it escalates to explosions. And then, but when the explosions happen, a lot of times, then one of them maybe somebody wants to leave or whatever. And then there's the fear that the person is going to leave, right? And if the other person leaves, since I'm feeling so not whole on my own, I become attached to that other person in an unhealthy way. I see my validation through that other person. So now it's like, even if that person leaves, or even if we break this off, that's not just a breakup, that's a downfall of my world. That's me going back to being nothing. That's how a lot of people feel. And so what does that lead us to do? That leads us to quickly make up and cover up the situation. And when we're after making up, what happens? Repeat everything we just said. It happens again, right? And of course, all of this ultimately leads to unhealthy attachment. And we start to get attached due to all sorts of external circumstances, external forces, external factors, external fears of what life without this person, this situation, this relationship, this stature, whatever it is, what would it look like, right? What are people going to think of me? What are people going to say about me? What am I going to, without this person, what am I going to be worth, right? And so you have people, due to all sorts of fears and external factors outside of the relationship itself and the connection with one another itself, that people start to stay entangled rather than to detangle, right? And this could be, some of them could be even to a certain extent legit, right? Stay in it for the kids, right? That's entanglement. Now, don't get me wrong. There are times where it actually, like staying it for the kids. There are times where that might actually, not always, certainly not, but there are times where that might actually be worthwhile. But the point isn't staying it with the kids and then stay in this miserable situation. No, deal with your issues, right? And usually that means way before dealing with any couple issues, you got to deal with individual issues, your own stuff, your own trauma, your own garbage. Why is it that when this thing happens, when this person says this thing to you, which might be bad, we might be able to agree on that, it's their fault for saying that thing to you, but why do you react like this? Whereas you see that other person around the corner, when something like that happens to them, they react like that, something different. So why is it that you react in this particular way? Can you hear the idea that as much as it feels natural to you, it's coming from a certain place within your experience, within your past? Because if they can react a different way than you react, that means that there's more than one way to potentially react to the situation. Which means that probably what comes naturally to you in his autopilot for you came from somewhere. You picked that up somewhere, right? Even if you want to say it's nature and not nurture, fine, but even then, that's changeable, right? So that it always really comes, the healing comes down usually to that, right? Hold on, I'm getting some messages over here. Okay, so that was a private message. I'm gonna leave it like that. But I don't know. I feel like these issues of healing and therapy and things like this, I think, are very much. Okay, besides the comment was made firstly that sometimes let's leave the first one out, but these psychology concepts are, I don't know, in some areas or in some communities not looked upon positively. I don't know, but from what I'm familiar with, there's psychology and psychologists and therapists and mentors and coaches and helpers and whatever in the what's it called, in the all sorts of religious communities. A person just responded to me that some rabbis oppose it. Said, okay, I don't know. I know, all I know is you could maybe some certain people do. I don't know, but it's definitely very, 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 very widely accepted at this point. I don't know. I'm not exactly sure what you're referring to. But sadder. So I think so. This is what ultimately it leads to this unhealthy attachment, right? Due to these external factors, and people start to stay in situations because they're afraid of all sorts of other things that have nothing to do with the relationship itself. It's like, hold on a second. Let's take away all of that stuff on the external, all that stuff on the outside. Just, do you actually want to be with this person, right? Right. I mean, even in shidduchim sometimes, right? There are people who want to say like, oh, you should like, okay, you want to break off a shidduch, you want to break off a setup, a match. You're going out with a person and you want to break it off. Like, hold on a second, why you want to break it off? It's just like, you're like, okay, I'm not feeling it. Well, hold on a second, what's a reason? Like sometimes people will make you feel like you need some kind of reason, some justification to like not spend the rest of your life with this person, to not marry this person. You know how crazy that is? I think we discussed this once before about 5 weeks ago. You know how crazy that is? Like, no, I don't need a reason to not decide to spend the rest of my life with this person. I need a really big reason to, yes, decide to spend the rest of my life with this person, you know? So yeah, but that would be an example of like an external factor. And yeah, so that definitely exists. And so we have to get very, very, very clear. Like, do I want to be with this person? Now, by the way, again, like I'm saying before, it doesn't mean like anytime like person's married for a few decades and they have a bunch of kids or whatever. It's just like, oh, I'm not feeling it, so I'm leaving. Because I heard this class from Eli Deutsch, who said, listen, if you're not really feeling it, you're in it for external circumstances, then you're in an entanglement, not a healthy relationship, right? Obviously, I'm not saying that, right? I'm not saying that either. But we do have to recognize about if we do find ourselves in an entanglement, okay, how can we go ahead and turn that into something that's healthy, right? That is possible. That is definitely possible to do. To take something that's an unhealthy situation, an unhealthy dynamic, and turn it into a healthy dynamic. Matter of fact, that's usually when most people begin to actually make a change. Usually. Why? Because usually people are the way they want to be for a very long time. And sometimes it's not working out. They get into a relationship. If they get married or whatever, let's just, for my scenario, they get married. And then there's problems that come up. And then it comes to the stuff hits the fan and it's really getting close to like, it gets to rock bottom. And it's just like, all right, there's maybe the D word could be in the works. And then it's just like, holy crap, I don't want that to happen. And then sometimes people begin to make a change, right? Now, does it have to wait till there? No, but usually people make change when it's easier to make change than to stay the same. And that means usually things are things got to get pretty rough to get to that point, right? But ideally, if you're not at that place yet, if you're not married, if you are single, so no better investment than to get into this stuff as much as you can beforehand, right? To get healthy beforehand, for sure. Anyway, either way, even if you do that, you get into a relationship with a person in a real way, in a marriage kind of way, there's a lot of times there will be stuff that comes up, even if a person did a lot of work. But said there. So back to this though. Question: where is this all? If you think about it, right? Where's all this dysfunction coming from? So again, it's like we're sharing. I mean, think about it. Why are you staying in such in unhealthy situations, right? Typical answer is because if you're acting in this dysfunctional way or in this dysfunctional situation, probably because you're dysfunctional, right? It's okay. We all have a little bit of that in our lives. This is not an attack. But that means that it's coming from a place of trauma. And this happens a lot. That matter of fact, we often subconsciously set up scenarios to recreate past unresolved traumas and dramas. Right? It's funny. Our inner world often creates our outer world, right? All sorts of, whenever we go into situations, it comes along with expectations, it comes along with certain assumptions, past unmet desires and unexpressed feelings come out. And we start to control the other person, try to control the other partner, try to manipulate them to fit a certain role, to fit a certain situation that we have planned out in our head or in our subconscious. And again, this is why healing and therapy is so important, right? Just think about it for yourself as an individual, right? Wouldn't you want to heal that voice in your head? I mean, that thing is with you all day, every day, your entire conscious life, and then also truth is also in your unconscious life when you're asleep. So it's like, that is like probably the best investment, honestly, you could do. if you could drop 20 grand right now, people I think about like, oh, it's expensive, it's this, it's that. Like, let's say you could drop $20,000 and have your head straight afterwards. I know, and I'm being magzim. I'm exaggerating. You know what I mean? So I'm trying to exaggerate to make a point. If you could drop $20,000 right now to have your head straight, to be coming from a healthy place, without this depression, dysfunction, negativity, sadness, self-loathing, all that stuff is gone, clear. Would you do it? I'll tell you what, if you wouldn't do it, then you have money problems. Think about it, by the way. What do people spend? That's like 1 year of tuition, man. You know? It's like 1 year of tuition, college tuition, or if you have kids in a yeshiva in America, you know? Maybe like half a year in America. So like, this is stuff that's really, really, really worthwhile. And so let's understand a little bit like the characteristics of an entanglement versus the characteristics of a relationship. Before we do it, hold on a second. I think someone popped over I got a few messages over here. Hold on a second. Learned in family origins, it says we need to change it. Yes, true. Okay. Characteristics of entanglement versus relationship. Okay. So entanglement would be kind of like what I said before. You're a jerk, right? Whereas healthy relationship, anyone want to say what healthy relationship would be? I'll do it. Healthy relationship would be, I'm hurt. So different. Can you hear that idea? Like, can we pause and feel that one a little bit? Imagine your partner, who maybe you love, maybe you have a soft spot for them in your heart, and maybe there's drama there, but still, your partner comes over to you and says, you're a jerk, right? So you're ready to go at it with them. On the other hand, they come over and say, I'm hurt, right? Especially if that's a gal saying that, right? And we'll talk about this next week, God willing. We talk about vulnerability. That opens the door for a relationship. That opens the door for emotional intimacy, intimate connection, right? Coming from a place of authentic sharing. Again, authentic sharing, right? You're a jerk is accusation, is attack. Forget about whether it's right or wrong. It's me leaving my dalet amot, my personal domain, and going into your domain to give you a label over there. As opposed to, I'm hurt, that's in my domain. You hear? That's authentic sharing. Right? I'll give you another one. You don't care about me. Versus, you showed up late. I'm trying to take the you out of it. Maybe we could find the one. I was waiting for 20 minutes in the cold. How about that? Better? And to do that in a way of like, again, not in a place of accusation. Obviously, tone of voice plays a big role in this stuff. Not in a way of accusation, not in a way of attack, but in a way of sharing feelings. Very mushy, I know. And so can you realize that this is like, everything we're saying here ultimately comes down to, are you attaching an interpretation on what the other person did, right? And usually when you do that, it's a fear-based interpretation, right? Versus the other side is just simply like the naked truth, the truth with no interpretation on it. Right, again, let's go back to that first one. You're a jerk versus I'm hurt. I'm hurt is the truth of how I'm feeling. You're a jerk is, actually that also might be true, but that's not the point. The point is that I'm interpreting, I'm putting a label onto you, right? The more you interpret situations, right? The more you interpret situations, the more you're going to get into arguments and entangled situations. The more you have a authentic sharing, what a rabbi of mine likes to call a courageous conversation, and share where you're at in a healthy, non-attacking, non-judgmental, neutral kind of way. Now you're opening the door to relationship. Now it could be the other person. will spit on you in that space and slam the door in your face. It could be. This is next week's conversation, vulnerability. It could be, but this is the only way relationship happens. So when you realize that, when you internally really internalize that reality, so then you step forward, you do it, and if they slam the door in my face, okay, I'm doing my part to open up the door towards relationship, towards authentic connection, by way of sharing, by way of being real to myself, while also respecting the other and recognizing that they have a real for themselves too. Right? And this is the only way relationship happens. That's the thing. People want a shortcut and be like, oh, if I only control over here or manipulate over here just a bit, because how could it be that this other person really wants to do? Now you're undermining a relationship. Next week. This is next week's stuff. But so the solution becomes recognizing that it's making a judgment call, making these subtle attacks that people do, nitpicking and just like, sarcastic responses and all that. This all leads to unhealthy pulling of strings and frustration and stuff like this. Whereas healthy is a direct inquiry, right? Sharing from yourself, from a direct place, an authentic place, without labeling, without attacking or whatever, just sharing, state of matter of fact where you're at, opening the door for connection and for a response. And also kind of doing that for the other as well. A direct inquiry without agenda, without strings attached, without connotations attached. That's a good line, without connotations attached. You gotta write that sucker down. Hold on a second. Without connotations attached. Okay. So, yeah. Another example. Unhealthy entanglement means, and this is a big one, right? Like we said before, relying on someone else to fill you up, relying on someone else to make you happy, right? Or by the way, the opposite is true too. Making yourself responsible for their happiness. That's also no good, right? Firstly, that gets you doing a bunch of things that the other person doesn't want you to do. Also, it's not healthy for you. It's not respectful of yourself. You're not responsible for the other person's general happiness, right? That you have to leave that in their space, right? If you keep taking responsibility for their happiness, guess what? You're encouraging them to be miserable. Some of us know relationships like that, right? You see it in your family maybe, okay? So if the person's miserable and grumbling, let them do that. Let them do that. That's recognize where you end and the other person begins. Okay? If they ask you for a favor then say yes when it's comfortable for you. Extend of yourself when you decide to extend of yourself. And when it's too much or it's not the time, say no thank you. Okay? Say I can't right now. So anyway, but that's a big one. Relying on someone else for your own happiness, right? That's not going to work. By the way, that's a lot of what's going on behind these entanglements, behind these unhealthy relationships. Sorry, I cut out there for a second. Yeah, that's a big one. So what's the healthy alternative? The healthy alternative is that thing that you keep looking to receive from your partner is the thing you need to self-cultivate. Let me say that one more time for y'all. That thing you keep looking for from your partner is the thing you need to self-cultivate. Let that one sink in, my friends. That's a big one. Especially for the guys, that's a big one. Right? Remember that time in high school when you decided, you know what? I'm not looking for a guy right now. I'm not looking for a girl right now. Right? When you decided that, okay, that's it. You know what? I'm good on my own. I'm not looking for a girl right now, right? That's when they all started flocking, right? That's how it is. That's how it is. Separate conversation about why that's what they want, but said there, confidence, because you took responsibility for yourself. You're an independent. So now you're not coming from off as a needy, right? As a leech. You're coming off as a person of stature, confidence, ownership of self. It's attractive. All right. So another example is we got any questions here, by the way? You don't want to share anything? Questions? How do you cultivate feeling complete from your other half by yourself? I don't think I understood exactly what was intended there. Communication in a self-centered society. Yeah, we are in a self-centered society. That's okay. It's because we have a soul. The soul's innate desire, first and foremost, is to connect to God. So we are coming from a self-centered place. That's okay. Our whole idea in this life is to go ahead and to take that reality and then channel it for the good and then become less selfish and become giving of self. All right, now let's see what the other one was. Meaning a partner. Hold on. Let's say, hold on a second. We got a couple of them coming in. Meaning a partner makes yourself feel. Guys, unless it's really private, do me a favor, send it publicly because people don't know what the heck I'm talking about, and then I'm going back and forth, and people don't know why I'm not answering their question. Meaning a partner makes you feel complete. How do you achieve that? Meaning a partner makes you feel complete. How do you achieve that by yourself? Oh, okay, very good. Point is to first and foremost achieve that by yourself on the level of yourself as an individual, right? It means build a life that you love, right? For example, it means doing figuring out self-care. What does self-care look like? Hold on a second. Let's say a parent needy. Is there a way the partner doesn't think that we need them? That's a great question. Nice, Lauren. Hold on a second. Let me get to the other one first. So the very important question is asked here. Okay. Lauren, that was an awesome question. I love that. So the question was asked, okay, hold on a second. How do you make yourself, full on your own? So first and foremost, it means building a life that you love, right? Imagine there was no such thing as couplehood. Just imagine there was no such thing as couplehood. Okay, so what would you do? Now go do that, right? And a lot of it has to do also with what's called self-care. Self-care doesn't just mean doing things that are fun. Self-care means I'm doing things that energize me, that after I finish doing them, I feel full, I feel rejuvenated, revitalized. You got to make a list of a number of those things and put them into your daily and weekly routine. Exercise, for some people, it is. Definitely yoga and Pilates and all that stuff. For some people, it is. Then you'll get some women who'll be like, and this happens with women, whatever, married women with kids or whatever. They'll be like, I really feel so much better when the laundry is done. No, you're cheating, and you're only going to cheat yourself. No, that's not your. Let's say the laundry was done. Now, what would you do? You know what I mean? Like, no, and it's not even just what would you do. It's what are those things that energize me, that fill me up, right? Go for a run on the beach, maybe. Just sit by the water even. Exercise is a big one, yep. A cup of coffee curled up on the couch or in the park or something like that, for some people. Honestly, for an extrovert, sometimes it's going out to a party or to some social scene. For an introvert, that would be the opposite. You deplete. An introvert gets depleted when they go out in that way, and they would fill themselves up by curling up on the couch in a blanket with a book, and a coffee and whatever. But it's different for different people. So you have to figure out what it is for you. But the point is, that's just one aspect of it. The point is, build the life that you love. Imagine there wasn't this whole thing of couplehood, right? Imagine that for a second. And you can just do whatever you want. What would you do? Build a life that you love. And then, Bezrat Hashem, someone else will come step into that life. Someone else will see. We'll see when they look at you, they'll see a complete person. They'll say, oh, I want to make couplehood with that person. Oh, I want to be with that person. Right? If you're always feeling like thirsting for something else to fill you up, people can sense that and step away. It's a lot of pressure. It's kind of like fundraising also, by the way. Interesting enough, it's kind of like fundraising. Many philanthropists, a lot of times if they get involved in the project, they want to know, they hear from a pitch from someone who's raising funds for a particular cause. A lot of times they'll want to know who else is involved. Are there other people involved, right? Why? Because if not, they don't want to feel like the whole thing is on their shoulders, right? That like it's always going to come back to them. If not, everything's going to flop. That's suffocating feeling. Right? And it doesn't feel like a mutual healthy relationship. I want to be with a healthy person, a person who's full. Right? Don't you? Don't you want to be with a person that's full? Yeah, you want a person to desire you, yes. But don't you want that person to be full? If there's a party that doesn't want that person to be full, it's because you're intimidated, because you're insecure, because you feel like they have options. Okay, that's your own work you have to do on yourself. But that's a separate conversation, perhaps. And okay, we all do, most of us. So sorry. Okay, so now we had. We had a couple of. I lost the chats. Where are they? Chats. Hold on a second. Exercise. Relationship involves giving. Being self-centered is the opposite, right? Being self-centered is the opposite of giving, right? So we come from this world of self-centeredness. That's our first nature, is to be self-centered. And then one of our goals and our works in life is to turn that around, to extend of ourselves to others. That's okay. Yes, no doubt about it. Now, we went back. Lauren's thing was, let's say you appear to be needy. Is there a way to reverse that partner? This is all loaded, though. It's loaded. What do you mean? Why do you appear to be needy? Could it be that really you are needy, right? Well, to reverse that your partner doesn't think they're needy. Well, Lauren, if you wanted to get specific, I don't know if you want to go into back and forth over here, but and maybe if she does, we can put her on video if she wants, or audio. But question for you would be, all right, well, what do you mean? How do you show up needy? How do you think that you show up needy in people's eyes? Yeah, that I don't mind that one so much, Dave, to be honest with you, because we do have to, at first I think we do have to be like, okay, let's put it this way. If you're walking down the aisle and you're looking at the person in front of you under the chuppah, under the wedding canopy, and you're saying, you know what, I'm not doing this because I think this is going to be what's best for me. This is a giving act. I'm going to marry you as a giving act to you. Me, I'm not going to get anything out of this. I don't particularly want it. I'm doing this as a giving act. Tell me something. Any of the ladies on here, who wants that in their life? The answer is nobody, right? So it doesn't work that way. People need to start. I don't know who the theys are. I got lost in the pronouns. Can you clarify that, Dave? Every woman and every man under the wedding canopy wants to look across them and see a selfish person making the most selfish decision they could possibly be making. Again, there's thems, theys, the guy, gal, husband, wife. Like I'm getting lost in the vagueness of it. For me, it's vague. I know you know what you're talking about. I don't know what you're trying to say because don't know if you're talking about the same person both times you use the pronoun, or if it's talking about a different. I'm sorry. They don't consider what they have to offer. Who's the they? Themselves or the other person? You see what I'm saying? That's why I'm getting a little unclear what you're trying to say. Dave will come back to you if you clarify, if you write in again. Okay, Lauren, back to you. Like, if you didn't realize you were needy and then realized your happiness depends on them, how would you change it? Oh, okay, fine. So Lauren, I hope I answered that a little bit with what I said to the previous person who shall remain nameless, I guess. That, yeah, we need to go ahead and build your own life. There's a couple of things. By the way, one more thing I would add is the ability to check in with oneself and say, when they ask you to do something, is this something that I really want to do? Is this something I really am comfortable with giving? Now, again, we said in the past, a person can extend of themselves, even if it's not comfortable, because for the sake of I want to be a giving person. I want to do something good for the relationship, whatever. My wife asked me to take out the garbage. I'm not feeling like it, but I'll go ahead and do it anyway, even though I'm not feeling with it. It's not comfortable for me, but like, fine, okay. That's what I'm supposed to, that's something I do because I'm a husband, but the ability to go ahead and to say, hold on a second, if you're right, because if your happiness is dependent on someone else, you're going to start doing your best to make sure that you keep them happy, to the extent you could do that, to such an extent that you lose yourself. Right? Again, someone acts miserable all the time in order to get you to do services for them, not consciously, of course. Nobody means to do this in a nasty way. But at some point, you say, hold on a second. You like to start saying, I don't know if the right word is no, but to start saying no to people, right? Start saying no to things, to stop feeling like, because like the way you check in with yourself, and we discussed this in the class on Gvura, we spoke about boundaries, is to clarify, like, and also in the class on Sefirat as well, like where it goes. Am I really giving in this situation by choice, or am I kind of like a victim of I don't want to say no to this person, because if I say no to this person, they might think badly of me or reject me or get upset with me, so I'm going to say yes even when. And so when you make a pattern of that, you become a victim of the situation instead of someone who's in the relationship in a healthy way. So I would say that those three things: number one, build a life for yourself. Actually, different order. Number one, find things of self-care to incorporate into your life. Number two, build a life for yourself that you love. Number three, start checking in with yourself. And am I feeling like this is really by choice, or like am I really feeling like I'm a victim of this situation? And you'll find if you're coming from this place that you're coming from, you'll find that will be the case a lot of the time. And so we got to begin to start saying no thanks to those things, which can be petrifying. If you're in that situation, is absolutely petrifying. But that is where growth will begin. And that's where real relationship will ultimately happen, when you're able to go ahead and be your own person and not be so easily, just following after what people want because of your fears. Okay, I hope that's helpful. I hope that makes sense. If you want to speak more, we can speak more. You can find me on WhatsApp, whatever. Rivka says, when you have nothing to discuss but problems and baggage, or if you are focusing only on yourself rather than thinking about the other person. Is that a question? Is that an answer? Sorry, Rivka, don't know what you're trying to say. Good to see you here, though. Dave, if someone is self-centered, they can't offer. People who are complete find it easier to give. That's for sure. You can even go further than that. The giving by someone who's not in a healthy place, oftentimes is coming from this unhealthy place of codependency, right? Spoke about that in the week of Chesed. Rivka, here. That is a very important point, Rabbi. It shouldn't be that you lose yourself in a relationship. Right. Okay, God bless you. Tov, so last one here, like we said before, unhealthy is assertions of control, right? Assertions of control. And that's usually what comes up in these entanglements, right? Concertion of control of the other, what they think, what they feel, what they do. You're very concerned about it. You're very concerned about what they think, they feel, they do, right? What they do, what they feel. Let them be, and let yourself be. Okay. Another assertion, right? Another thing that would be unhealthy also is unhealthy assertions of control over yourself, right? Because you're afraid of what they're going to think and what they're going to feel and what they're going to do, right? And so many people. This is a big problem with the ladies in particular, for the ladies more than the guys. This one, they go on a date and then afterwards they're so concerned about, did he like me? Right? It's like, hold on a second. Stop worrying about what's in his. That's on his page. That's in his Daled Amos. Did he like you? Did he not like you? Focus on one thing. You go on the date. Focus on. Did I like him? Did he treat me respectfully? Do I want to see him again? That's all you got to think about. If the answer to those are yes, on to date number 2. That's a healthy way to go because it's in the moment, right? A lot of gals, they get caught up in like, and guys too, get caught up on like, is this person my husband? Is this person my spouse? But you're going way beyond the moment and you're getting attached to the end. That'll lead to anxiety, and anxiety will lead to the end of the relationship, right? Just stay in the moment. Simple questions. All we're in the moment right now is date number 1. Okay. The only question right now is, do I want date number 2? That's it. Would I like to see them one more time? You're not saying, do I want to marry them? You're not obligated in anything. Do I want to see them again? That's it. That's it. All right, I have an article on this. Where did I put that article? So I have an article on this if you guys want. Anyway, so right. So this is the healthy ideal is to let go of other people's thoughts and also let go of you trying to control yourself and trying to control other people. Let go, get authentic, be vulnerable. How should you be vulnerable? But that's scary, you ask? Isn't vulnerable weak? Well, if it was really weakness, then you wouldn't be so scared of doing it, would you? Huh? Anyway, with that, we leave off for next week. Tune in for next week, which is when we're going to discuss the answers to all those questions, which is going to be we got a mug over here, which is going to be all about the concept, Sefirat of Malchut, which essentially is related very much to that attribute of vulnerability. And then again, of course, what is healthy vulnerability and what is a poor excuse for vulnerability, right? A lot of times people think, like we just mentioned, vulnerability is weakness. As we began to show already, you see it's the exact opposite of weakness. But God willing, we're going to talk about that in a big way next week. And so I hope you'll all join me. And I thank you for joining me now. I hope it was worthwhile. I hope it was a worthwhile spending of your time. And hopefully gain from something. If anyone has any questions about any of this stuff or relationship stuff or whatever, you're welcome to be in touch. Eli the Jew at gmail.com. ELITHEJW. My friends, have yourselves a wonderful evening, a wonderful week. Be blessed.